bio. It's been 30 years now. I feel it every day. What could we have done this morning? So many things in Lawrence. We could have gone to Wheat Field, which I did. We could have walked in the increasingly beautiful day all downtown. Or we could have roofed our house, which is also what I did. So I crawled off the house to come today because this is important, and I have a 15-year-old son and my wife who can roof the house while I'm here. So those things are important too, but it's important to be here, and I'm glad you are all here. Speaking of important, I don't know whether you wake up every day and think, I wonder who the insurance commissioner is. If you don't, you should. Now, I realize in my business, this is a very important job because we take health insurance. And we rely on strong regulation of health insurance. As I'm sure you all know, regulation is evil and bad. Freedom of the market, and Adam Smith's hand reaches down and crushes people. And we don't need that, do we? Well, if we didn't have a strong insurance commissioner for most of my life, I can actually name all the insurance commissioners, we would all be in bad shape. And little by little, that has begun to attrit over the years. So, for example, if any of you have Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas City, something strange happened to it in the last few years, where you go and pay $25 or whatever to see your physician. If you come in and see a mental health provider for a legitimate diagnosed condition, they will pay against deductible, which means you will pay $113.70 every hour till you hit your deductible. Under mental health parity, that's not supposed to be legal. You're supposed to have an equivalency there. So mental health conditions are equal to physical health conditions. And as you're probably aware in our society now, mental health spending is no longer considered discretionary spending, especially in the last 2 years. I'll tell you, we need more mental health support than we've ever needed before. And I'm actually not kidding. We've seen a tremendous uptick in people's depression and anxiety in the last couple of years. So that benefit going down to deductible makes mental health care for people on Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas City unaffordable. That's the kind of thing the Insurance Commission could regulate and could stand up against. And instead, we've been having to do investigative journalism to try to figure out how that has happened. That's one. I could give you 100 more examples of why your life is actually changed, whether you realize it or not, through the Insurance Commission. And let us remember, who was the last Democrat who was Insurance Commissioner? Kathleen Sebelius. So it's the path to the governor's race. So maybe you could, but that does show what a powerful role this is. All right, that brings us to Nathaniel McLaughlin. He received a Bachelor's of Science degree from Winston-Salem State University in North Carolina. He also studied at Wake Forest University and its School of Law. He retired in November 2017 from Sodexo Management Services after 37 years of continuous service. That must have been a good job. At the time of his retirement, he was a district executive overseeing the company's healthcare operations in Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, Kansas, Northeast Oklahoma, South Dakota, and North Dakota. He was responsible for administering a $33 million budget. McLaughlin represented the 8th District of Wyandotte County as commissioner on the Kansas Housing Authority Board from 2005 to 2011. And in 2008, he was elevated to the 33rd degree in Masonry, which none of us know how that works, but I know it's hard. In 2013, he was elected Grand Master of the Prince Hall Masonry for the jurisdiction of Kansas. He currently resides in Kansas City. Kansas has 3 adult children, 11 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. No wonder he had to retire. That's a lot to keep track of. He is married to Renee Ponder McLaughlin, and we welcome now Nathaniel McLaughlin, a candidate for the university. Hello, sir. You're not supposed to sit over here now. You're not supposed to sit there.
Good morning. I am Nathaniel McLaughlin, candidate for Kansas Commissioner of Insurance. I want to thank you for taking time out of your Saturday morning, which here. It's going to be a beautiful day for a change on a Saturday to visit during this important election year. I have been an active Democrat since the 12th grade. And since I'm older than dirt, that's been a very, very long time ago. During my senior year in high school, I was elected treasurer of the North Carolina Teenage Democrats. After high school, as the moderator stated, I went on to pursue my undergraduate work. But when I left home, I left in my mother's 64 Ford Fairlane. To my right was my high school sweetheart, and in the back was our daughter that we made in high school. We had a U-Haul trailer attached to it, my mother's dresser drawer for our crib. So although I went off to law school, I had to stop and get a real job because I was a firm believer that it took two to dance, and I was going to take care of my wife and my child. And I started working for a company called Marriott Management Services, and eventually was purchased by a company called Sodexo, a Paris-based company. And for that company, I did work 37 continuous years. So I want to share with the citizens of Kansas that I have the business acumen and the academic credentials to represent you in the office of Insurance Commissioner in an ethical, professional, and honorable manner. My values that I left Carolina with, I think, resonates across the plains of Kansas, and those values are work, faith in God, and respect for thy neighbor and thy country. And with those values, I will execute the mission statement of the Insurance Department, which is to regulate, advocate, and to educate. In the area of regulate, I don't intend, when elected, to be an adversary of the insurance industry, because there are many honorable men and women in that profession who depend on that industry to put food on the table. In the area of advocacy, I want to advocate for those 350,000 adults in Kansas who have no health insurance. The first step in that will be a very strong proponent for expansion of Medicaid. Medicaid expansion will pump life back into our rural medical facilities, and it will provide a security net for those individuals who have nowhere else to turn. However, I must stand before you and be very honest about my stance on Medicaid. Prior to the changes in the Affordable Health Care Act, for every dollar of Medicaid that was spent, Kansas got 73 cents back. Today, with the changes in the Affordable Health Care Act, Kansas gets 90 cents back. There still is a 10-cent gap. So while I will advocate for Medicaid expansion, I will be very sure that I come to the table with how we will cover a 10-cent gap. We all know that Kansas is struggling financially, and to advocate for adding to that dilemma without a solution, I don't want to go down that path. I look forward to your questions, and may God bless this great state of Kansas, you and yours. On November the 6th, remember Nathaniel McLaughlin for Kansas Insurance Commissioner, because every candidate that I have heard this election cycle, be it Kansas, be it Missouri, be it wherever, health care has been at the forefront of the discussion. Thank you.
Little side note here, we've been doing a lot of shows lately, both on KLWN and KCUR, on election issues, particularly youth vote. And I don't have the last one up on my blog yet, but I have several of the others we did on the Me Too movement amongst teenagers. Very important. Most of us here today are more in my age group, but there's a whole lot of young voters up there with great enthusiasm. The last show we did, we talked about the League of Women Voters and how they had gotten out and just registered high school seniors and young adults. It's really impressive. And the blog is familypsychological.com. It's very simple. Or you can go to our website and click through, which is drwest.com. And many of those, I think, are really relevant to what we're discussing today. So, Kansas has the distinction of being super Trumpy before there was a Trump. We were the early adopters of this, and we know how it goes and how it ends. And I don't think we want to do that again. I sure hope we don't. We have a great opportunity with Laura Kelly to forge a whole new path. And as I think every one of you knows, a whole lot of Republicans on the state spectrum have defected to Laura's campaign, partly because she's really cool, and partly because they don't want to go down Brownback 2.0. So we have today with us a representative from Laura's campaign who will lead us forth to the promised land. She is, like me, a Hutch native. You like to eat at the Anchor Inn?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anchor Inn, best Mexican food in the world. Following a successful military career, she had many endeavors. Let me try again. During her military campaign, she led a Black Hawk helicopter platoon during Operation Rocky Freedom, obtained degrees in public policy and organizational psychology and leadership. She lives with her husband and her West Point classmate. Isn't that cute? And 3 daughters in Manhattan, where she works as director of consulting and training at a fast-growing company called Civic Plus. In 2017, she was elected to the Manhattan Ogden USD a 383 Board of Education. And this year, she ran for lieutenant governor on the Joshua Spotty ticket and has since joined forces with Laura Kelly's campaign, serving as chair for women's advocacy group Lead Kansas. Will you welcome Katrina Lewison?
Good morning, everyone. It is delightful to be here, and as was pointed out, I did come from that other college town, the one that wears purple, so don't hold that against me. And we hauled our 3 daughters here this morning, but they said that they didn't want to hear Mom give another boring speech, so my husband has taken them to the toy store over on Mass Street. I think that they thought that was a lot more exciting this morning. It is wonderful to be here representing Senator Laura Kelly this morning. I had the opportunity to meet Senator Kelly during the primary, and as was pointed out, I did run for Lieutenant Governor with Josh Swatty. That was quite an adventure, and it was not on my to-do list this year, but I had to think about my home state that I loved so much when I was asked to step forward and run. And I thought about what my daughter said to me when I thought about running for school board just last year. She said to me, "Mom, you always tell us to be leaders, and you should step up to do the same." And when I looked around at what had happened to our state over the past 8 years, and I thought about what future I wanted my daughters to have, I decided that I would answer the call of duty and step up to run. Now, I wasn't always so focused on the state. I, as a young person, couldn't wait to leave Kansas and get out of here. And I did do that by going to West Point, and I had a lovely career in the Army as a Black Hawk pilot, and many adventures through Iraq and Korea. But by far, the biggest adventure of my life has been raising my 3 daughters. And probably like many of you, when you think about your kids and you think about putting down roots somewhere, it was a natural choice for me to come back here to my home state for probably many of the same reasons my parents chose to raise their daughters here, for the good schools and the great communities, and important for me and my husband, the opportunity for us to earn a living through our own hard work. My husband and I have done that. We've built 2 successful businesses in Manhattan, but we recognize it's not just through our effort. It's working side by side with fellow hardworking Kansans. But I can see that not everyone has had a great experience, especially over the past 8 years. And we can see this in our public infrastructure, in our public school system, and people who need help with health insurance. And as I traveled around on the campaign trail and I listened to what Kansans were telling me, and I told them what I wanted to focus on, which was fueling our economy and focusing on education, I had that opportunity to listened to Senator Kelly, and she was saying many of the same things that I was saying. But the difference is, I was telling people what I hoped to do, but she could tell people what she has already done, and how she's been in the trenches, and how she's had success working across the aisles to get things done. And I really look up to Senator Kelly as a role model and a mentor for me, because one of the things that is so important to me is to continue to inspire fellow women to step up to lead in our home state, because we need women's voices heard. Now, thank you. So when I look at Senator Kelly, I see someone who has dedicated her life to children and family. Senator Kelly came from a military family herself, and she traveled all over the world as a child. But just like me, when she decided to put down roots somewhere and raise her daughters, she chose Kansas. Now, her entire life has been dedicated to Kansas children and families. She served for nearly 2 decades as a director in the Kansas Parks and Rec Association, and then she went on to run for office. She made the decision to step up to run because she saw that her representative was cutting funds for education, and she thought that that was so important that we reversed that trend. As we can see through Laura's 14 years as a state senator, she has focused not only on education, but being an advocate for accountability for the Department of Children and Family, and for expanding Medicaid. Now, we have seen strong women up and down the ballot in this year's election cycle, and that's very exciting to me. And Laura is no exception. The reasons to vote for her is that she has shown us that she is a leader who knows how to get things done. She listens to people and knows how to work across the aisles. Now, if Laura were here, she'd say she can do math, and she knows that the Democrats in our state are the minority. So because of that, you have to be able to listen to people to get things done. She will continue to advocate for Medicaid expansion and to expand our education system, which has really struggled over the past 8 years of the Brownback, Collier, and Kobach administration. So, this is where you come in. What can you do? What can you do to turn the state around and to get things done? There's a few things. One, you can vote early. So who here has voted early already? Look at that, at least a third of you. That's exciting. So I encourage you all to get out to vote. Vote early, because then you can spend the next 3 weeks doing the hard pieces, which is talking to your friends and your neighbors and having those tough conversations. Give them a sticky note of the people that they need to vote for and send it to the polls. You might even offer to drive them to the polls. And it takes every person to do that. The next thing you can do is see Monique. Now, where's Monique? Monique? If you don't know Monique, she is a super volunteer, and she is leading the canvassing and outreach here. Is that correct? I think I got that almost right. You can sign up with her to do canvassing or to do phone banking here for the Douglas County Dems, and that's extremely important because, as we saw in the primary, every vote counts. The last thing is you can see Rebecca. This is Rebecca from the Kelly campaign, and she has these wonderful packets that she's put together. These are called Lead Kansas packets, and it is up to each one of us to do our part to lead Kansas to a better state. So there's a checklist of things that you can do, things that you can just do as part of your everyday, such as make your voting plan. Part of that voting plan is talking to friends and neighbors. Vote. Help friends and family make their voting plans, sign up for 2-hour volunteer shifts, and share things on social media. So, great packet put together by Rebecca. You can see Rebecca or Monique. Now, I don't think I have to tell you all how high the stakes are in this year's election. When I look at my daughters, I know why I am doing this. And even past the primary, why I continue to be involved and to be an advocate for Senator Kelly. Because this is not about me. This is about our state and our state's future. And I cannot encourage you all enough to get involved and stay involved. And thank you so much for showing up, because it shows your dedication to making our state better. Thank you all so much.
Feel like we are in a, is it working?
Yeah.
Okay. feel like we're in a little play here about three people who found some dollhouse furniture and decided to sit and talk about it. And which of you is going to do the opening song?
I did a lot of theater.
Okay.
There we go. I'll do a song and dance routine for you.
You're going to do it. So we have a system for getting your questions, and I believe there's little papers around, and you can send those out. I will start because I prepared a few here. So, Nathaniel, let me start with you. I mentioned the issue of mental health care with Kansas City Blue Cross. Is that something you would be interested in looking into to figure out why there's such a differential between what a person pays for their physician and what they're going to pay for mental health services?
I view mental health just as I view physical health. And I view mental health as being one of those areas for our citizens who have expenses should have access to purchase insurance coverage. I view it as a pre-existing condition, which as insurance commissioner, I would work with our insurance industry to cover. One initiative I would put in place when elected is to put together an advisory panel. And that panel will be made up of healthcare professionals, representatives of the insurance industry, consumer groups, and professional organizations. And we would come together semi-annually to talk about the insurance landscape and issues like pre-existing conditions and mental health will be topics of discussion.
I will give you my number to be on that. So, Katrina, we're in an interesting environment nationally and at the state level where the image of taxes has been presented that we all put all this money in a bin out in front of our house and a dump truck comes and picks it up and hauls all our money to the landfill and just buries it there. And this is the idea that we're being told by Republicans, it's just throwing our money in the trash. So how does your candidate, how does she convey to the people of Kansas that that's not how the economy of taxes works? It doesn't go to a landfill. It's invested in our local economies. How is she going to get over that divide and begin to sell a message we've had for 30 or 40 years now?
Well, I think that one thing that Senator Kelly would tell you is that because when we look at what's happened in the past 8 years, our state has been decimated with tax cuts, and that that's not a stable way to run a state. So what we want to do is to go back to a stable and responsible way of running a state. A stable tax policy is a balanced stool with property sales and income taxes. We have to make sure that we're not giving those tax cuts to the upper echelons of Kansans, but making sure that we are taxed in a responsible manner. Just to answer your question of it's not going to a dump truck, that's an interesting analogy.
It's called the Democratic dump truck. They put a sign on it.
That's how it goes on. I can see firsthand as a school board member what happens with taxes. And we fund important institutions that we can all be proud of in our state. That's actually one of the reasons that I wanted to step up to get involved at all. I had no desire to be a politician, but when I looked at my own community and what was happening with our Kansas taxes, I saw that the people that were hurting were folks like my kids and my neighbors. When you have to cut out millions of dollars out of just a simple local school budget because the state has mismanaged its funds, we are impacting our friends and our neighbors. So we have to get back to a place that we can value our institutions and make sure that folks can rely on those institutions as we continue to rebuild our state.
Thank you. So there's several questions here about expansion of Medicaid, which I am very interested in too. I do want to toss out one point that if elected, Nathaniel would have minimal influence over that because Medicaid is a program that's adopted or not adopted by the legislature. You may remember Sandy Prager was a big fan of expanded Medicaid, and that didn't go very far. So the questions here, and I have a couple of side questions on it. How would you promote the idea of expanded Medicaid and advocate for that with the legislature?
One of my goals during this election cycle was to establish a professional relationship with all of the other candidates, regardless of party. So whoever wins on November 6th, and when I win as insurance commissioner, I could make a phone call, knock on an office door, and have a sit-down discussion with those elected officials. I am privileged now to already have a professional relationship with a significant number of the state senators and our state representatives. I also, as I have traveled about, intend to have a working relationship with our 5 congressmen and 1 congresswoman and our 2 U.S. senators. Because one of the business principles I work with is to begin with the end in mind. And beginning with the end in mind, I know what I don't know. So another principle I will work with is to seek first to understand and then be understood. And what I want people to understand is that I am a strong proponent of Medicaid expansion. If we look at the 26 states where Medicaid was not expanded, each of those states have seen an increase in the number of people who do not have health insurance. We are fortunate in the driving distance from Topeka to have the national office of the National Association of State Insurance Commissioners located in Kansas City, Missouri. I know how to go and follow best practices. I would also establish relationships with my peers, so I can go to those states where Medicaid has been expanded and is working well to say, how did you do it? I'm not one to assume that I know all about anything, because I know a little about nothing. Thank you.
There's a New York Times best-selling book written by a graduate of Shawnee Mission East High School called What's the Matter with Kansas? Many of you may have read it. And in it, his core argument, using Kansas as a sort of an analogy, is that voters will vote against their own best interests if you can get them off on something that's really a tangent. And I think that book was prophecy. It has come to pass. How does Laura Kelly reach out to voters who have this kind of tradition and draw them in at this kind of golden opportunity where they may not be enchanted with the Republican candidate? How does she reach out to them and bring them in so they see their best interest?
So I'll answer that, but I do want to touch on the Medicaid expansion for just a second. Let's not forget that Medicaid expansion is popular across the aisles, and Senator Kelly has been an advocate for Medicaid expansion during her career as a senator, and she will continue to be an advocate for that. And to go revisit the Democratic dump truck.
You're going to probably use that.
It's good. I like that one. Let's not forget that it was our past governor who decided to turn down the opportunity to expand Medicaid and to send our tax dollars back outside of our state, $2.7 billion and counting. Now, look, that's just stupidity.
Talk about voting against your own best interest.
Voting against our own best interest. So what I have seen and why I continue to look up to Senator Kelly is because she knows how to reach across the aisles and to get things done. as Democrats in Kansas, we have to continue to do that, and she's been a mentor to me. Now, I'll share with you a story of something that happened to me out on the campaign trail, and that's that I spent a lot of time out in western Kansas, which is very red. And I had just finished giving a talk about my experience in Iraq, and it was a very lovely and supportive crowd. And then one of the ranchers came up to me and said, "So you're running as a Republican, right?" And I said, "No, sir, I'm a Democrat." And he said, "Well, why in the hell would you do that?" And his entire demeanor changed, and he did not want to have a conversation with me any longer. And what I told him is, "Sir, we are both Kansans, and I think that there are things that we can both agree on." So I stood there with him until we could find a common ground and find some things that we both thought were wrong, that we have to come together to fix in our state. That's exactly what I see Senator Kelly doing. She does that across the aisles with her fellow senators, and that is why we have seen so many Republicans who have advocated for her and have now endorsed her in her bid for governor.
Nathaniel, and I'm going to have both of you respond to this one also. I'm going to start with Nathaniel. Would you support some form of a statewide health coverage that would cover every Kansan, maybe integrating that into Medicaid, but then also health coverage for all?
I would support that if that option was optional. On this particular facet, I do not typically toe the party line of advocating for socialized medicine. I believe in providing a social option as long as it's optional. And I have this position because of a personal matter that I had, brother. And candidates are not supposed to share their weaknesses, I was told. But you will find that I am an honest person. In 2014, on December the 29th, I had a major blood vessel burst in my brain. I wasn't found until 26 hours later because when it happened, I was in a room alone. When I hear the discussions that went on when I was comatose for 3 weeks, I am very happy that my 2 sons could make educated choices on getting the best medical product for the father versus having to work through a governmental agency to say, this is where your father is going. Because that wife with all those grandkids and 2 great grandkids, she was told that it would be 10 years before I could hope to move a little finger. And I'm not saying it was all private insurance versus socialized medicine, but in my particular case, I want to be very sure that the next Kansan has the option to say, yes, I will take that state-provided option, or I want to go buy my own private health insurance.
And I'm going to follow up specifically about CanCare in a second, but let's go ahead and have Katrina respond on behalf of Laura Kelly about whether the candidate would support a statewide health cover.
So on that one, I think that I would refer to her Laura Kelly website, and you should look at her detailed policies that she has laid out on health insurance.
Okay, so this idea of socialized medicine is an interesting one because my mom died a year ago, and I was very thankful for Medicare and all that it did provide her over the course of her retirement. As a service provider, not only wouldn't I touch Medicare with a 10-foot pole, but we're advised by our malpractice carrier never to take Medicare. It is a de facto violation of your confidentiality. They can come in and review your records anytime they want on a moment's notice. And so when I hear Medicare for all, I have somewhat the same reaction Nathaniel does as a service provider. So if we go down a path of governmental medication, Medicare or health cover, we're going to have to address a lot of issues we haven't even thought of yet. A great sub-example of that is CanCare. which was a product of brief Governor Collier when he was Lieutenant Governor. As a provider, this is the most horrible experience you can go through to get credentialed. It took us 11 months once to get one person credentialed with these 3 contractors. And this time I just started calling the governor's office. And they actually, got with it because he hadn't lost the primary yet. And I threatened him it was going to make it an issue. So that works good until you lose the primary, then they don't care. But CanCare is a disaster. How would each of you, to the extent you could, respond to CanCare? What to do with it? And if you need me a long lecture on why it's a disaster, stay till 3 this afternoon.
A auditing group put together by our legislature back in 2015 attempted to do an audit of the CanCare program. But because data and other vital things that were necessary to come to a conclusion, this group had to report back that no recommendations or decisions could be reached on quality of care outcomes or financial outcomes. And those were 2 pieces that Brown back, can't even get it out right, don't even like saying the name, that Brown back put out in 2013 when CanCare came about. CanCare is operated by 3 management companies. Sodexo Services is a worldwide management company. So for 37 years, I worked for a worldwide management company. And I know we went to the table and our profits came out of the fees that we charge our clients. Kansas is a client of those companies. They are for-profit companies, and they're taking monies out of Kansas that could stay in Kansas. If I can't measure your outcome, you're fired. I will work with the legislature and be a strong advocate to return the oversight to those programs back to the state agencies that have the talented people already that are able to do it. Why should we pay a for-profit company a fee to do what we have people that are able to do?
I think that Laura Kelly would agree with many of the things that you said, Nathaniel. Additionally, she agrees that CanCare is a mess and needs a full review and an overhaul. Now, I've learned in my business career that when you have a system in place that is covering people, you don't just close the door on that one day. Sometimes you have to run systems concurrently to make sure that things don't fall off the tracks, so to speak. So, yes, we have got to review CanCare and overhaul that. But we need to make sure that we are not leaving anybody behind. And Senator Kelly feels very strongly that we make sure that as we do review the system and continue to overhaul this and make sure that we give the best possible care to Kansans, that in the in-between stages, we are not letting anybody get left and fall through the cracks.
So in that same vein, for a good 25 years, both at the national and especially at the state level, we have gone privatization heavy. Your driver's license, when it pops out of the machine somewhere, that's a private contractor, which means it doesn't pop out of the machine every time. Mine were just lost. Getting a number so I can bill Medicaid, some machine that we're paying a company to generate a number. Well, I'm going to generate a number right now, 469-37542. I did that for free. Somehow the machine has to do that. It didn't work either. The foster care system in Kansas, anybody remember when foster care was privatized? It was going to save us a bunch of money. It cost in the end 3.5 times as much money, and it was a worse service. So we have gone crazy with privatization. What do you, particularly in Laura Kelly's situation as governor, is there a way to push back against this? It's another thing we're voting against your own best interests. We're just transferring our tax money to private corporations, just as Nathaniel said. What way is there to push back against that?
I think that if we look across many of the institutions that the Brownback administration decided to privatize, it is an example of not valuing what our public servants do. If we look right into Pica, there are so many office buildings that are just empty now, as we have decimated the role that our public servants play. I think that that's something that Senator Kelly wants to turn around as we value what our institutions do. Part of that is bringing transparency to some of the contracts that we're awarding. One example is a multi-million-dollar, decade-long contract in the IT world in Kansas. Now, I'm an IT executive in the company that I work for in Manhattan, and technology changes very quickly. I would not sign any contract that is a decade long when it refers to technology. So I think that that is just one example of how we have tried to privatize things, and it's not in our own best interest as Kansans. We have a responsibility as a state to press our elected officials, and this is something that Senator Kelly would feel passionately about, that we should hold our elected officials accountable for the transparency about what our public institutions are, where our tax dollars are going, and that we don't want to just privatize everything to necessarily save a buck, because sometimes, and oftentimes, that's not the best way of doing things.
Nathaniel, I had asked earlier about kind of selling people on the value of taxes. Well, that just sounds terrible when I said it. The value of taxes. How would you sell the public on the value of a strong health economy with hospitals that are going out of business because of the lack of expansion of Medicare or Medicaid? How can you advocate to show people, voters, that this is a valuable economy? It's a good product.
As I've traveled about Kansas, and when I started this campaign in other Democratic venues, I've shared that I'm going to be like Captain Kirk from Starship Enterprise. I'm going to go where no typical Democrat has gone before. I've been in places I've never heard of. I've been to Belle Plaine, Kansas. Don't ask me how to get there, but it was a very moderate, red piece of the state. And if I'm going to win this election, and I'll get to your question, if I'm going to win this election, I have to attract moderate voters. But I don't want to do any attraction by telling a lie. So my comment on taxes this way. This candidate is opposed to adding to the tax burden on any Kansas citizen unless it goes to take care of our elderly, educate our children, or assist our disabled. Because that goes back to those values that I talked about earlier. The value of respecting my neighbor. Sometimes my neighbor needs help. Since I've been in Kansas, North Carolina, I've seen Kansas farmers ship off bales of hay to the East Coast when there was a drought. We help each other. And obviously, we have an obligation to take care of our elderly. And without an educated workforce, we will not be the strongest nation on this planet. And I think having a candid, honest, eyeball conversation, Kansas, whether they are Republicans or Democrats, they're not bad people. You just got to touch that right spot and come to agreement.
Taxes as well.
Sure.
So when I was running in the primary, oftentimes my children would get questions from fellow classmates on the school bus, which is a little unfortunate, but they were very close to the situation.
Were they asking for policy advice?
Well, one question that came home was, Mom, the kids on the school bus want to know, do you want to raise their taxes?
You did ask for policy advice.
So I said, girls, this is, let your mom handle this one and you just need to worry about school. But I did say that an answer that they could give them was taxes pay for the roads that they're driving on, the school bus that they're riding in, and the school that they are going to. And that's important that we remember that. The taxes aren't necessarily a bad thing. They help our state and our communities that we live in. And when we look at what's happened over the past 8 years, our taxes have actually, the burden has been shifted. And it's been shifted in property taxes and sales taxes to the folks that maybe have less means to pay those. So when we talk about tax policy, let's get back to maybe a more equitable way of doing things, and let's not forget those important things that Nathaniel told us that are good reasons to pay taxes.
So we're coming down to the end. Does anyone have a question they would like to add here? Because you can just wave and ask it. Okay. So I have a question on the political side of this. Do you have any advice for Greg Orman?
Well, I spoke to Greg Orman.
Did you tell him I'm not going to vote for him for anything ever again if he persists?
I had an opportunity to speak to Greg after the primary, and I told him I would not be supporting him, that I would be supporting Senator Kelly. And I think that that's because Senator Kelly is the obvious better choice. She has the experience that we need in our state. She has the relationships built with her fellow senators and representatives in our Kansas State House, and that is important. We need someone who has been there, has been in the trenches, and who knows how to get things done. I encourage Greg to endorse Senator Kelly, which I don't think that he's done that, but I also do believe that Greg has a good heart and wants the best thing for Kansas as well. And he's a good leader. This is just not his time, as I told him. So I hope that he will come out and endorse Senator Kelly. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. And as I drove in from the highway this morning, I did see some Ormondale signs up. I'm hoping that this crowd can go replace those signs with Senator Kelly signs, maybe before this day is done.
And maybe people would like to send him an email about that and give him some of that advice too. Did you have a thought on that, Nathaniel?
Yes. 3 months ago, I would have said that this is America and the gentleman has the right to run. Similar to 2 years ago when I ran for Congress in the 3rd District, and folks were saying, why are you running? You do not have the support of the national. However, last night when I couldn't find my glasses, I happened to find them by the computer, and when I got on the computer, I saw a flash that the governor of Alaska has decided to end his campaign because the numbers say that although he's governor, he cannot win the election, and he wants to do what's best for the state of Alaska. The governor's race, and I'm in my race to win it. I fully expect to want to be your next insurance commissioner. However, the executive mansion of Kansas is critical that we have Senator Kelly sitting in that seat. Kansas is at crossroads. I would, and although I respect the gentleman, he could do Kansas so much good and have a footnote in history that he did the right thing for the state of Kansas by ending his campaign and endorsing Senator Kelly.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but I was at the Pittsburgh Airport U.S. Air Chairman's Preferred Lounge. I flew a lot at the time. The night Al Gore won the election. Gosh, that was an exciting night. And then I woke up the next morning and my wife said, I think you need to see the news. And I bet there's one Ralph Nader voter in this room somewhere. Well, how different would our lives be right now if it just had stayed the way it was at the Pittsburgh Airport? And it's just hard to do revisionist history, but just a different world. So you might want to send a gentle email. I thought that was a lovely way to put it, Katrina. A gentle email to Greg and say, you'll get another shot and you'll get my vote some other time. So in closing, my son and I did a very interesting tour of the summer trip. This was the nuclear trip. And so we actually went to the Yucca Flats atomic testing site. You know that house you see when the explosion happens and it blows all the paint off of it? We have a picture in front of it. We looked at test craters. We went to the museum. It was amazing. Then we went to a Nike missile silo in San Francisco. I have a video of them raising the missile to launch position. And then we went to a Titan II silo, just like the one around Wichita. And we talked to all of these, the docents are all Cold War vets. Well, one of them was the final commander, a woman, final commander in Tucson of the Titan II silo. And I was reminded of something. This was while we were putting children in cages, by the way. It was the same week. And I was reminded the Russians are not our friends, strangely enough. And you might not think these local or state elections matter in whether we're best friends with Putin or not, but it does. Every Democrat elected has the ability to speak out and say no in a lot of this. Whether it's Russians or Saudis, what in the world? You know, I bought my bone saw today. I just have one I keep with me. You know, what in the world? Or whether it is, I work with young women. I am really tired of this horrifying misogyny. They are traumatized enough as it is. They don't need this. Every Democrat elect has a chance to say no, whether it's the insurance commissioner or whether it is the governor of the state of Kansas. Everybody has that chance. And if you can go out and tow your friends to the polls, I made sure every teenager, not 18-year-old and up that I know is registered to vote, get out there and make it happen. It is rare that I would utter this sentence. Kansas makes a difference in national politics. When was the last time that happened? And now it is upon us. So go forth. Do we have any final announcements or am I it? I'm doing the benediction. Go forth and do good.